Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we usually go back and check out a Netflix original film in the order of release, but today we have a very special bonus episode. We are going to be looking at Netflix 2023 computer animated fantasy action comedy, The Monkey King. Directed by Anthony Stacchi, it stars the voices of Jimmy O Yang, Bowen Yang, Jolie, BD Wong, Jolie, Haong-Rappaport, and Stephanie Hsu. I'm Jesse. I'm here solo. This is a brand new Netflix film that I'm going to talk about, give you my thoughts. As always, I'm going to spoil it along the way. So if you are keen on checking this one out, haven't seen it yet, give us a pause and come back a little bit later on, because we kick off our show with the Fast Flicks, where we do a quick little summary of what the film is all about. And this one, it's about a monkey who has been rejected all of his life, and he goes on a quest for immortality. Ooh, interesting. I think this is a good one where we're going to talk a little bit about the context of the film and how it ended up on Netflix. And I think some important information that you probably need to know is that it's based on this novel called Journey to the West, which is a Chinese novel from the 16th century during the Ming Dynasty, and it's attributed to Wu Shengzhen. It's regarded as one of the greatest classic Chinese novels of all time, and has been described as arguably the most popular literary work in East Asia. So there was an abridged translation called Monkey, which was released in 1942 by Arthur Wallis, and this is what it's probably known as best in English-speaking countries, and I think there's been some adaptations of that as well. So there's a nice little story. I guess more information on the novel to sort of have some context around this. It's an account of the legendary pilgrimage of the Tang Dynasty's Buddhist monk called Zhuangzhang, who travelled to the western regions of Central Asia and India to obtain Buddha's sutras, or sacred texts, and returned after many trials and much suffering. So that whole idea of trials and tribulations and overcoming odds to, like a hero's journey almost. So that's what this film's based on. The sort of film, this version that we see, sort of starts around October of 2017, where Oriental DreamWorks, which are now known as Pearl Studios, announced the film with Steve Benrich and Ron J. Friedman as the writers. Didn't materialize then. Then we sort of skip forward to May of 2021, where Netflix announced that they were going to release the film with Pilin Chow as producer and Stephen Chow as executive producer and Anthony Stacchi as director, as we see. Real FX were originally appointed to animate this film until it was transferred over to Tangent Animation, who had produced other Netflix film called Next Gen, which I think we're going to cover on this show soon, as well as the series on Netflix called Maya and the Threes. Then we get to August of 2021, and Tangent Animation had actually shut down, which sort of halted production of this film, and apparently Netflix were displeased with their work, Tangent's work of that animation anyway, so the film was given back to Real FX, and that's how we've got this film. It's important to note that this has an all-Asian voice cast. There's 47 different locations in this film, so a whole bunch of different, locations and settings for this animation. There's 381 different types of vegetation in this film, all done in different greens, so a whole bunch of different greens. The Monkey King, our main character, he's got 390,302 hair follicles that create his fur. So, and this is sort of shown in 4 distinct variations to sort of show him, being armored or wet, those types of things. That's quite interesting. A lot of detail obviously has gone into the animation in this film. There's this scene where they're in the archives of hell with all these scrolls, and apparently there's a bit over 8.5 million scrolls in this actual room that they animated. Crazy. And on top of that, apparently there's about 115 different unique characters that were designed for this film. So an awful lot of work, as always, that goes into an animated film. This film has a tagline. The tagline for this one was, "The legend has arrived." Had another one, which I much prefer, and that is, "The greatest teams stick together." I love that. I love that tagline, because this film is about the Monkey King, who obviously it's the title of the film, but also his other character, Lin, that we're going to talk about, working as a team alongside this magical stick that the Monkey King uses. So I think that's a fantastic tagline. This did premiere as the closing film at the New York Asian Film Festival on the 30th of July of 2023, before hitting Netflix worldwide on the 18th of August 2023. What are the critics and audiences saying about this film? Very hard early on. I sort of have held off recording this. I watched it on pretty much as soon as it dropped on Netflix, and there was like 40 odd sort of reviews across all platforms. So waited a little bit to sort of get a little bit more of a consensus. But Rotten Tomatoes, it's got 31 reviews, sits fresh at 61%, so just fresh. Then the audience, it's fresh as well on 64%. That's on less than 50 reviews. IMDb, it's only got 417 ratings at the time of recording, sits at a 6 out of 10. We go to Letterboxd, again, just like 499 ratings, so not a lot of ratings. It sits at a 3.1, and Metacritic as well, it's only got 10 reviews, sits at a 59, which is in that yellow middle range. So sort of, not the top end of Netflix animation that we've seen sort of recently, I guess, if you think about Nimona and Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Those films been pretty well received, often in the high end. So this one's sort of sitting in the middle. What are my early thoughts on this one? I guess I'm sort of in that same sort of boat. Like, this is fine family entertainment. It doesn't break any expectations or do anything do anything new. I think it's just fine, and that's where we're gonna kick off into the characters of this film. So we're gonna start with the Monkey King. Obviously, title of the film, Monkey King. It's this monkey is born on a mountain from a magical rock. The audience, we see him as a little baby monkey, and as he sort of develops and grows up, he's constantly seeking acceptance and constantly rejected over and over again, and has to work on his own and live on his own, I guess. In saying that, he's very selfish, annoying, and probably, like, for me, a really poor protagonist who, as the audience, I can't and probably never will like. I feel like his arc's really poor. He does team up with Lynn, as I mentioned before, but he's so horrible to her. He talks down to her, shows her little respect, refers to her as like this insignificant pebble throughout, and I know that that's sort of meant to be a metaphor, but he's also constantly ditching her, leaving her behind. He's arrogant, illiterate, and realistically unwilling to change throughout the whole film until the last couple of minutes, which is not really an arc that's thought out or executed properly, I think. So that's a little bit frustrating to start off with. I did mention Lynn. So Lynn's this peasant girl who lives in a little town or a village, suffering from drought. So she sort of teams up with the villain, the Dragon King, or is secretly working for him to sort of get this stick that the Monkey King uses as his powers to return it back to the Dragon King. As a character, she wants to make the difference, and I guess as a character in this film is probably the one character that's almost sort of fleshed out a little bit. The Dragon King, who I mentioned, is the main villain, but a campy villain at that. It doesn't go like full villainous Jafar from Aladdin or anything like that, but has some really memorable moments, which I'll probably talk about in some scenes that I liked as we go. The Dragon King does have these two little sidekicks, Benbow and Babbo. They really reminded me of those two little things that follow. I can't even remember their names. They followed Hades around in Disney's Hercules, if you've seen that film. That's what they reminded me of. Or even the Netflix film, the original that we did last year, was it Wendell and something, and they had similar sort of little sidekicks, I guess. The other characters in this film, we had Jade the Emperor, the Demon of Havoc, Wangmu, Buddha. They're all like challenges or obstacles for him to face on this hero's journey that we touched on. So not much fleshing out for them to do. They were more just obstacles for him to face. The director of this film, Anthony Stacchi, interesting sort of little filmography to look at, because sort of started off co-directing that animated, I think it was Sony Pictures film called Open Season, as well as going on to direct The Box Trolls. So that one's another decent animated film. Did a lot of storyboard work as well for films like Curious George, Missing Link, and as well as Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio that I've already mentioned today. Real random fact here. These are things that stood out the most for me. Did a lot of visual effects on a lot of films that you'd know. So Back to the Future, the original Back to the Future, did some visual effects. Hook, the Peter Pan film with Robin Williams, as well as the classic film Ghost, and another animated film, a stop motion film in this, but James and the Giant Peach, which is based on Roald Dahl's novels. So quite a varied little background there in a whole bunch of different films. All right, time to talk about some scenes. Let's talk about some scenes from this one. What are the ones that I like to start off with? I think that the start did sort of grab me a little bit, because we meet the Monkey King as a baby monkey, and he's got these laser eyes, which were pretty interesting. And he's got these laser eyes, doesn't know how to use them, sort of cutting through everything. And right at the start, we see these laser eyes go through Jade the Emperor's palace, and the Emperor's cat sort of just follows, like a cat does, follows the light, and just fell off the cliff. I thought that was hilarious, like death to cats to start the film off. I'm not a big fan of cats, so that made me laugh. There's this scene at the start that the demon, it's sort of like the Monkey King's trying to fit in with the other monkeys in the jungle, and this demon comes to take one of these kid monkeys, and it sort of made me laugh a little bit. Maybe I was taken aback a bit. And then quickly it turned to sadness because we get this shot where they go back to all the mothers getting their kids back, and there's this one last mother who didn't get her kid back, and that was quite sad, to be honest. The land of the dead, when they travel, when Lin and the Monkey King traveled to the land of the dead, visually that was super impressive scenes there. And the standout scene of this film is definitely the Dragon King's song. This one song that he sings under the sea. It reminded me of Ursula from The Little Mermaid. Lyrics about taking the world by storm, and it was just funny and really well animated and good lyrics. So, really good song that I recommend from this film. What are some scenes that I didn't necessarily like in this one? I think, I guess there's probably more than I'd like. But the Monkey King, he goes to this western town that's sort of down and out, and this is where we meet Lin for the first time. And, this is a bit of his cockiness almost, that, he's demanding this. He's got one more demon to kill before he can ascend, with the gods. And he's demanding this ascension ceremony. And there's this little demon girl there that he just fights and just goes on and on. Just rubbish. Didn't like that. Sorry, apologies. I've been pretty crook, so my voice is not holding up too well. I think the under the sea dragon. There's a scene where he's on land trying to confront the Monkey King, and he keeps watering away almost, so he has to go back to the bath to get some water. And this was just overplayed. They did that too much. So I think that was a bit too repetitive. And then this leads into this chase where the Dragon King's in his bathtub and they're racing down this cliff, and the sidekicks and the Monkey King. It was just lame, really lame. Then there's another sort of challenge, this idea where the Dragon King and his little sidekicks are going to try and poison the Monkey King through peaches, through and pretend it's the nectar of immortality. Just wasn't funny. Wasn't a fan of that. I mentioned before Wang, she's the Queen of Heaven, and she's up there and she's got all these ingredients, and Lin and the Monkey King break in to try and make this potion. It's just another silly battle, really. Wasn't really needed. There was this chance for a good moment though after this battle where Lin falls from the sky and the Monkey King leaps to save her, and this was that moment where we could have said, okay, he does things for other people other than himself, but he does that, which is nice, and Lin recognizes that. But then the follow-up from that was so poor. Like, it just sort of ruined any thought that you had of him actually changing, because he didn't. So that was wasteful. The whole end, I've got to talk about the end. It was absolute rubbish. Like, the idea that we'd seen this turnaround in personality from the Monkey King, like I was talking about, it was horrible, the whole film. It was just ridiculous after we'd seen him for an hour and a half being so self-centered that now he would just sort of meditate and lock himself away for 500 years to reflect on his actions. Maybe that's a cultural thing. I just didn't like that as the end of the film, because we didn't see enough to see that this is something that he was going to follow through with. So my thoughts there, and that'll lead into the themes and the ideas of this one, I guess. And I've sort of touched on these through the scenes anyway, but the idea of insecurity and demanding acceptance at times. The Monkey King wants to be accepted, and to do this he's often rebellious, and that's fine, but there is this fine line. Even if you've been rejected and let down over and over again, never being satisfied, like we see with the Monkey King, it's not an excuse. So that's an idea there. I think the idea, and through the Monkey King, being original, being true to yourself after being rejected, that's fine too. But the idea of immortality and power, like, why do you need it? Why can't you just be like, cool, I'm the Monkey King who defeats demons to look out for people and protect people from being attacked? Why do you need immortality and further power? It's a good question, good thing to ponder about. The Monkey King does, he chases dreams, he chases his goals, and these are all well and good as long as you don't lose focus of the things and the people around you, especially Lin, like the Monkey King. So poor to her, like I've mentioned throughout this as well. I think, the Monkey King, he needs to find his way somehow, and part of that might be through working as a team and teamwork with Lin. We do see Buddha at the start and at the end, and that's nice, this idea of balance and enlightenment, and that the idea of rule and order exists, but you don't necessarily have to always follow it to live a fulfilling life. I talked on this with Lin before, but the idea that she's this tiny pebble that can make a big ripple, make changes. That it's almost like the Nike motto: "Don't ask, just do." Do it. And in saying that too, you can make your own family who you want it to be. It doesn't necessarily have to be. The Monkey King doesn't have family. We don't see Lin's family, so there's two soul bodies that have no one there. So joining together, they can create their own family if needed as well. What did I take away from this film? It's really sad to say the main protagonist, the monkey, and I mentioned before how much effort went into the animation of his fur, compared to the rest of the film, he just looked poorly animated, looked really rushed and stood out. So a little bit of a whack for me on the animation of the Monkey King. Didn't look too good. I'm going to ponder a couple of things, I guess, some questions, because I mentioned before the Monkey King, he's got this stick. This stick is, what gives him the ability to beat a lot of these demons, and without this stick, he's almost nothing. But why is he so arrogant then? If he knows he needs a stick to be powerful, why is he so arrogant and so confident in himself? And in saying that too, I mentioned one of my scenes that I enjoyed was at the start where the Monkey King had laser eyes. So that's a talent or an attribute to himself, but we don't see that again really right until the end. So like, why is he so focused on using this stick? Why can't he use his eyes and develop those skills? Just something that's probably missed on and left out, that I just thought I'd ponder. I'm ready to wrap this up. I think we give the films on this show a rating out of 5. So for me, I think I think the conclusion lets this film down a little bit. I mean, and I said before, this film doesn't really break the mold in any way, but it's got some nice messages, like I've touched on with the themes and thoughts. But it sort of really needed to rethink the way it sort of drags the audience along to try and root for this character, the Monkey King, that sort of gives us no reason at all to actually want to see him succeed. So I think, I'm still going to give it a 3 out of 5, but it could have been better. It definitely could have been better with some sort of changes through to the narrative and some of the character development, I think. But obviously, my own personal thoughts. Are keen to hear what you guys think of this film. On our socials, we've got Twitter, or X, which was formerly known as Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. I'm going to put a question up there on socials just to ask, is the Monkey King a hero? Is he really a hero? I don't know. Maybe Lynn, to me, is more of the hero of this film rather than the Monkey King. And apparently she's a new addition to this story. She doesn't, that character doesn't exist in, the Chinese story journey to the west that this film's based on. So maybe she's more the hero than he is. As always, thanks for listening along. We've got a huge back catalogue of over 250 Netflix original films that we have covered on this show. So give us a browse, give us a subscribe, give us a like if you can. Have a listen, and we are back on Wednesday for our normal shows. As always, thank you.